Hello, and welcome to a guide about multiplayer functionalities and covenants of Dark Souls 3. In this video, I will be explaining basic online functionality of Dark Souls 3 in such detail that it's no longer basic, as well as laying the groundwork for an understanding of in-game covenants. This is a long video, so I'll put timestamps in the description and on screen if you're only interested in only specific online functions. Dark Souls 3 and its covenants can be completed entirely offline or without any online interaction. If you don't want to play online, set the launch settings to play offline and the network settings of the system menu in-game. However, many unique experiences are offered to those who use Dark Souls 3's online connectivity. In online mode, the player can write and interact with messages written on the ground. They appear as orange lines and can be written through a function of the player's menu. These messages can be helpful and aid in a player's exploration, or some may try to mislead players. They can only appear where a player can stand. There's a messages tab in the menu that allows you to write your own messages, keep track of your messages, and see the messages you have recently rated. When writing messages, you are limited to a selection of formats, words, and phrases, as well as all of the gestures you have currently unlocked. But the limited selection of words and phrases are all that you need to make comprehensive messages. Here, you can see me going through the message making process. Don't forget to cycle through the different formats. You can only have up to 10 written messages at a time. Writing new ones will delete the oldest message you have. Protecting messages is a feature that will help you from accidentally deleting an old message, as a protected message can't be automatically deleted. You can tell your own messages apart from others by the particle effects emanating upwards from them. The icon displayed in the left of the message will change as the message receives more ratings. To rate a message, select it and enter the button prompt for good or poor. If your message gets rated, whether good or bad, you will get healed as well as a notification. Also immediately available to the online player are bloodstains littered upon the ground, which, when interacted with, display the last seconds of a player's life, or in other words, how they died. These bloodstains do not have the green particle effects that your own bloodstain has, in order to prevent confusion, but as far as I can tell, the way they are placed is identical to how your own bloodstain is placed. Bloodstains can only appear where a player can die, which is basically anywhere, and are placed a few seconds away from the actual cause of death. They can alert the player to traps or hidden enemies. If you see many bloodstains in the same area, watch out. From time to time, ghost-like apparitions of other players can be seen roaming the world, but cannot be interacted with. They represent the actions and equipment of other players. The equipment they wear is not always entirely accurate, as surrogate items may be displayed to represent the type of equipment the player is wearing and not the exact armor. More opaque apparitions can appear at or near a bonfire, which show other players in greater clarity and accuracy, but still cannot be interacted with. The apparitions away from bonfires can appear almost anywhere, practically anywhere a player can go. There are likely some exceptions, but it's inconsequential most of the time, and I can't go and find out. Through my experience, these apparitions can be a few seconds or even a minute or so behind the real-world person they are representing. That covers the more passive online systems. Now to the more engaging methods of online play, summoning and invading. More direct interactions with other online players requires the player to be in certain predefined areas. Most segments of the world with enemies and a boss battle allow for this level of online play. There are some sections of the world that don't allow for summoning and invading. For example, players cannot invade or summon into the Road of Sacrifices or Firelink Shrine. Typically, for an area to qualify as a summon or invadable area, there must be a boss that corresponds to the area. In summoning enabled areas, players can summon each other through the use of white signs created with the item White Sign Soapstone, bought from the Shrine Handmaiden and Firelink Shrine, to play cooperatively through the level. In this method of online play, the one who interacts with another sign and summons that player is known as the host, as that person brings another player into his or her world. The summons, unless under specific conditions, will appear as white phantoms. Specific rings and covenants can change the appearance of summoned players. To be a host, a player must be enkindled and the area boss must still be alive, as they will be unable to see the white signs from which to summon otherwise. Then simply find the sign and interact with it to summon phantoms into your world. Selecting someone's sign without summoning that person will show their appearance if you're being choosy. One who seeks to be a friendly phantom can place their sign regardless of being enkindled or not, or having defeated the area boss or not. Player may not place a sign if there are other players in his or her world. Enemies interact with friendly phantoms the same way they do with the player. Keep in mind, phantoms can't interact with NPCs in the host world in any way besides walking into them. White phantoms receive souls for defeating enemies and an ember for helping defeat the area boss. The summoned phantom experiences no consequences for dying in another player's world besides losing some consumable items that they may have used. If the phantom and host wish to talk to each other while cooperating, both players must enable voice chat in the system menu under network settings. Also in this menu is the option Summon Sign Visibility. I have no idea what this actually does. I say leave it on unrestricted, because if you want only specific people to see your sign, like your friends, it's better to set a password. Fun fact, in the console versions, you can also set the display names of other players to show what they name their characters, or to show their gamer tag. There's a certain range of soul level and weapon upgrades that players must be in to summon each other. Please search for summon range calculators if you're curious. Setting a password will limit summons to those with the same password, and negates differing summoning ranges, meaning friends can play with each other despite the difference in soul level or weapon upgrades. The official guide says the game will prioritize showing signs from players in your contacts list if they are available, even without the use of a password. If you're having trouble summoning as a host, check to see if you are online, are enkindled, if cross-region play is active, and if your password is enabled. Most problems boil down to those 4 things. Keep in mind, if a hostile phantom kills a friendly phantom, the host will be unable to summon again for a minute or 2, depending on how many friendly phantoms were killed recently. There are NPC summons as well, which can be found both online or offline, but there must be no currently active password to see their signs. Being summoned is a great, low-consequence way to get souls and embers as well as learning the area. If you want to be summoned, place your sign somewhere others can easily find it. Remember to put a password on if you want a friend to summon you, or take off the password for random people to summon you. If you leave the multiplayer area while your sign is down, it will disappear and you will have to place a new one. If you placed a sign and want to remove it, simply interact with the sign to remove it. There are some methods of summoning hostile players as well, so be careful. Red signs, signs with a bit of red in them, and magenta signs all summon other players looking for a fight. There are also automatic summons, but those are covenant dependent. In these same multiplayer areas as where you can summon phantoms, players can forcibly invade into the worlds of enkindled players. If you wish not to be invaded but still play online, remain not enkindled. Invaders are called dark spirits. The typical coloration is red. The objective of an invader is generally to kill the host. Enemies will ignore an invader, and most enemies are incapable of hurting an invader, with some small exceptions. The invader receives souls for killing summoned phantoms and the host. The invader also receives an ember and a pale tongue for defeating a host. If the invader dies, the host and other players present will receive souls. The amount of souls received depends on a number of factors. The official Dark Souls 3 guide has this to say on the matter. Players are worth differing amounts of experience depending on their soul level and the role that you and they are playing when slain. The number of souls you receive from a kill is 1% to 5% of the amount of souls it would take for that player to gain their most recent level. Thus, killing a level 50 player would take the value of going from level 49 to level 50 and multiply it by somewhere between 0.01 to 0.05. This is accompanied with a table that, if I'm reading this right, means that the host receives 2% from red phantoms, white or gold phantoms receive 5% from red phantoms receive 1% from all targets, blue phantoms receive 5% from red phantoms, map guardians, aka the Watchdogs of Farron and the Aldrich Faithful Covenants, receive 4% from the host, white, gold, and blue phantoms. That is, if I read this table right and it's not the other way around. Remember, this table is from vanilla Dark Souls. Things have changed drastically since then. It doesn't even seem like the table is correct anymore. For instance, the host clearly gets more souls than summoned phantoms currently. Also worth noting, the wiki says that those in the Dark Moon Covenant get a bonus amount of souls from killing Aldrich's faithful players. There also appears to be a system in place in which a player needs to damage the enemy player at least once to get the full amount of souls for the enemy player's death. I don't know of all the nuance that goes into deciding how many souls are given to someone who didn't damage the now deceased enemy player, but from my experience, this penalty is minimal if non-existent for the host and friendly phantoms, and most severe for invaders. The death of an enemy player will result in one Estus use being replenished. The Estus is replenished to all players that had the potential to damage the phantom who died. If the host enters the boss room, any invaders will be returned to their world. If an invader dies, they will leave a bloodstain in their own world, which they must return to in order to reclaim their souls. If a host is killed by an invader, they will not be invaded again for a short time, around 20 to 30 minutes, unless the host uses a dried fingers. Dried fingers will allow for more invaders and remove the timer that keeps invaders from invading. The standard method of invading is to use a red-eye orb or a cracked red-eye orb. Using one of these items will cause the game to start searching for a suitable world to invade. You can continue to move about while the game is searching, but the search will end if a player enters your world, you die, or you leave the area. You can also use the item again to cancel the search. Every time the host is invaded, there is a chance a seed of a tree of giants has grown in the Firelink Shrine. Only one seed can be on the tree at a time despite however many times you've been invaded, so check the tree often. This is a consumable item that can only be used by hosts. Using it will make area enemies hostile to invaders for 45 seconds. The seeds used to have lasted for much longer. I'm still very salty about it. But in the update that nerfed these seeds, it also increased the probability of seeds growing on the tree. By the time this guide is up, the player population will have gone down some since the initial release. You may want to know where the most players are to maximize their chances of successful matchmaking. If you rest at the bonfire and select the warp menu, you can see which areas are the most populated with other players currently. A scale of none to 3 embers shows how populated an area is. Keep in mind that there are also NPCs that you can summon or who can invade. Let me set some groundwork. There must always be a host, that is the player who owns the world, or game instance you are currently playing in. Every other real-world player who enters the host's world is a phantom. There are friendly phantoms and hostile phantoms. White, gold, and blue phantoms are friendly. Red phantoms, or dark spirits, are hostile to the host. The hostile phantoms can also appear as yellow or blue with red shines. If they have a bit of red, they are hostile to the host. Magenta phantoms can damage any other player and can choose to be hostile or friendly. There are rings that can change a player's appearance to look like a host or white phantom, so look out. Only a specific number of players may exist in one world at a time, 4 players ordinarily or 6 players at the maximum. I like to divide this number into slots. The host automatically takes one of the slots. A host is the player to which the world originates. In many areas, there's a slot or 2 for friendly phantoms. The rest of the slots can only be filled with hostile players, or invaders. Invading phantoms can take all but the host slot, resulting in a world with 1 host and 5 invaders. This means that there is not always a slot available for a friendly phantom. NPC phantoms also occupy slots. Normally, not all slots can be used. Using dried fingers increases the slots available to the maximum of 6, allowing the player to summon more phantoms and be invaded by more phantoms. In some areas, the popular PvP area, the Pontiff, for example, only allows 1 friendly slot until using a dried finger, resulting in 2 friendly slots, while the area right before it, Irithyll, allows for 3 friendly slots after using dried fingers. The host may use the Black Separation Crystal to forcibly remove friendly phantoms from his or her world, but cannot remove hostile phantoms. Any player may use the Black Separation Crystal to leave a world that is not his or her own. The Black Separation Crystal is a permanent item found in the player inventory. Make sure that you have time to use the Black Separation Crystal whenever you try to use it, as you can be hit out of the animation and it can fail. There are specific parameters that limit direct online play. Some of these are set in the settings menu, such as cross-region play, but the gameplay limitation is soul level range. For balancing purposes, players can only summon and invade other players within a certain range of soul level. This range varies, so if you want specifics, please use a soul level calculator, which can be found online, or consult the Dark Souls 3 Wiki, which I've linked in the description. Weapon upgrades also play a factor in determining matchmaking, so again, please consult the linked wiki page if you are curious. Players can bypass soul level and weapon upgrade limitations by setting a password in the settings, which allows players to summon each other despite soul level discrepancies. However, if a player is summoned through a password and is higher in soul level by a significant margin, their stats will be reduced to more closely match the soul level of the host. If the password is enabled, you will be unable to see summon signs from other players and vice versa that do not have a matching password. These are the basics of invading and summoning. There's also an arena. See the description or the little notification in the corner if you're interested in learning about that. Covenants put more factors into the mix and change things a little. For instance, a covenant may change your coloration as a phantom, automatically summon others to your aid, or perhaps send you. Each covenant shapes the online experience in a specific direction with a goal in mind. Simply put, covenants modify the online interactions. To join a covenant, the player will need to find and equip their respective covenant, so an item that they can put on in their inventory. The player can change covenants quickly by equipping them in his or her inventory. Generally, most covenants have a covenant leader with which to interact with and receive unique rewards in exchange for covenant-specific reward items. Covenant leader is not an official term, but a title given by the Dark Souls community to describe an NPC or object with which the player interacts to rank up in a covenant. The items needed to rank up a covenant are exclusive to each covenant and can be obtained through online play, dropped from specific enemies, and found throughout the world as shinies. 2 covenant rank items per covenant are placed as shinies each playthrough. Even if you don't have access to a covenant, covenants can still be ranked up if you have the respective items and the access to the covenant leader. Please check the Dark Souls 3 wiki and the description if you are looking for specific information about a covenant. Now a small excerpt to deal with soft bans and other bans. I've never been banned, so I can only speak on what I've heard from other players, which can be unreliable. A soft ban is a temporary restriction of online functionality. Players who have experienced it say that their interaction with other players is limited to only other soft ban players. Each character may use the white ring circlet to undo the soft ban once. If soft banned again, supposedly playing in online mode for some time will lift the soft ban. There are more significant bans which make the player completely unable to play in online mode. These may be lifted in time, or they may become permanent bans. I don't have any advice here, other than don't do anything to get banned. Oh wait, I do have some advice. If someone drops an item in online mode and you don't know this person, never pick up the item. It might be a hacked item that immediately gets you flagged and banned. This information has been gathered by myself and is subject to error. My sources are the Dark Souls 3 Wiki, the official Dark Souls 3 Collector's Edition Guide by Prime Games, and my own personal experience in testing the functions and general gameplay from game launch in North America to version 1.15. All information I gave was assuming the game is updated to the most recent patch. I must also admit that I no longer play Dark Souls 3 regularly and can forget things, or my memory might lead me astray, so I must apologize if I forget anything. All the systems and features I described are subject to change in the future, although not likely at this point. All the information given in this video is assuming the game is unmodified. I'm not going to cover anything to do with hackers in this video, nor other nefarious deeds, nor am I fit to give advice on dealing with them. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to please the YouTube algorithm. If you have any unanswered questions, check that I didn't already answer it, and then post it in the comments if I haven't. If this video is not the best place to ask your questions, then consider asking me on Twitter, where you can find me at NOST__UNXPCTD. If you want more specific information based on a specific covenant, I do have a yet to be complete series, Guide to Covenants, that goes into further detail for each covenant. For the covenants I've yet to cover, please check the Dark Souls 3 Wiki.